Hello and welcome to Table for Five with no reservations. Take a seat at the table for a fresh, sweet, salty, tart, and pleasantly bitter conversation.
Thank you for taking a seat at the table. Tonight we're going to be talking about family relationships after children, a little bit of a look into our extended family and how our relationships have changed after we had kids. Tonight I have Jen.
Hello.
Jamie.
Hi.
Kim.
Hello.
Rachel.
Hey.
And I'm Tabitha. We're going to start with Jen and hear about her family, extended family.
Extended family. Hello.
Yes.
When my daughter was diagnosed, I think every relationship in my family shifted, and autism was new to my family. So we were all kind of learning as we went. It definitely affected my relationship with my mother, and not in a great way. It's much better now, but it actually made my brother and I a lot closer, and my sister-in-law, and they are her people. She loves my brother. She loves my sister-in-law. And then my extended family, they're great, but it was another power struggle for me and my mom. And I don't know how to articulate it. Everything came with judgment. Everything came with an opinion. I mean, she knew nothing about autism, but she knew everything about autism. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, but I'll give her the credit of the medications, because if it wasn't for my mother hounding me every single day about my daughter, I don't know if I would have had the courage to stop her meds. And then my mother drives my daughter to therapy to Vancouver every single week because I work. So, we've come full circle in that sense of we still butt heads, but, she's always said she'll never miss out on therapy. She always jumps in when I need her to take her to stuff. So it's, she's really
I love
stepped up
seeing
that
them
way.
together. There's like
Yeah,
a
they
giggle
do.
that Kaya has around.
She loves her Nana.
No one
She
else.
really does. Yeah, she loves my mom a lot. So it's neat to see,
Yeah.
How about you, Rachel? What about your family?
Sure. I think during the last episode, we talked a lot about our significant others. And while I was able to share some of our story, I don't think I necessarily articulated where Billy and I are at now. And I don't necessarily know it's easy to look at our family without kind of stating that now I feel like Billy and I are relearning how to date and be partners. Just like the dating aspect has shifted so much for us because we're also caregivers together. We're also coworkers in that respect together, because our response to a lot of stress and kind of our situation was multifaceted. It's constantly been evolving. And I don't know that we've had a ton of time to recover from each thing before another thing got hard. We are doing better than we have as caregivers, as coworkers, as people totally invested in the same goals for Sealy, even though, like we talked about as a group last week, our timing is different, our response to things is different, and our sort of flow in and out of these changing diagnoses or evolving hard. So with that, I feel like in order to build up who we've become as this team, our response in regards to all other relationships has really been to pull back. I couldn't be an employee. Billy had to be an employee because I couldn't be. He had a full response to that. I was momming so hard. We were totally withdrawn from our parents and our siblings. And we just really spent a long time trying to figure this out. And it just so happens that it's consistently more challenging. So now we're standing here in a shade of hard, and people are sort of finding out from the outside, from our family, from the inside to our life, but not necessarily to the community that we've built, that our heart is really hard and that this is what it looks like for us. And it's hard to respond to that as a person who hasn't seen the regression happening or seen Billy and I lifting each other up through this. I think there's a lot of room for assumption when we have not necessarily hidden anything, because I feel like we've been open, but we've been in hiding. Isolation has been a response to our withdrawal.
Well, people just don't see your day to day
And so they just assume that you're living like everyone else, and you're not.
Like they hear about the hard days, and I'm like, no, in between those calls are the hard days too. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's all the time.
They see just glimpses, you know.
Well, and it's hard too. I mean, we add to that. You know, Celie is going to call her grandma or my dad when she's doing quite well, or trying to get her out of a funk that she could be getting into. Like, it'll make her smile and to engage. I mean, you aunties receive those calls, but then you see the makeup on the Facebook. You see that the mom is feeling these emotional things and writing all this shit, and like, where does the reality fall? It's just hard. I mean, I know we're perpetuating the space between us, but our focus really is on Celia, and it's hard to like explain the depths of. Right now they're all gearing up to go to the 4th of July, you know, and I would love to be at the 4th of July cabin. I don't know if we're safe in the car all that way. I don't know if we can be by a lake and be by other people that she could body slam off into the water. Like, it's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
And I own that. Like, I'm trying to be in a place where I talk about my family, talk about it with my family.
Yeah. What do you think, Jamie?
For me, I am the 5th of 6 children. So I have a lot of brothers and sisters. I have 2 brothers and 3 sisters. And trying not to get in trouble here, although I don't anything that bad to say. And I guess we'll find out who listens to the podcast of the other 5. But I think in our family, there's always been this thing that the kids are like entertainers. Like, this is something I've been writing too. I haven't finished the piece, but kind of about how people project so much onto children and a lot of their own self-validation. They want to be the most liked from the child. They want to buy the child things, win them over. And, you know, when you have a kid who has autism, they aren't the most social and they don't build relationships like typical kids. And like Jesse doesn't get instant gratification from entertaining people. And he didn't as a baby. Like, he would sometimes play peekaboo with people. He would sometimes, you know, if you get really close and you're tickling him and you really get in there, you will entertain him. But I feel like there's just this expectation that, you know, like my daughter right now, she'll come into a room and she'll sing for you and she'll dance for you and everyone will sit around and smile and laugh and clap. And it is the cutest thing in the world. And I love all these things about kids too. Or, you know, you give a kid a gift, like, and they love it. I feel like in my family, that was hard for me in the beginning. And I don't even know if that bothered them. Not actually my family. Someone one time made a comment. They're like, oh, Jesse just doesn't even like me. So what's the point of like trying to engage with him? And I'm like, well, that is kind of the point, that you have to take the time and you have to invest in him if you want that back from him. But I will say each of my siblings have built their own relationship with him, and they are very understanding and kind. And I think what has helped a lot is seeing me go through it and like how heartbroken I was at first and how hard it was for me to accept his diagnosis. And I think, I don't know if someone thought I was being dramatic or if they were just like, what's, you know, because there's parts of him that seem typical. And at the time I had 2 siblings that lived here in Colorado with me. Now I just have one. And the other ones didn't really see it that much. And so, you know, if they would make a comment that he was on the spectrum, I would be upset. If they made a comment that made it seem like they didn't think he was on the spectrum, I would be upset. So it's hard to like gauge that, because I don't know how much of it's me projecting things onto them or seeing what I'm afraid people are judging us or him as. But I think now they all know, like, they come around, and if he comes around them and he wants to play with them, or if like my brother-in-law is like, they'll pick him up and throw him, and he loves that stuff. So he loves playing with them. But, you know, otherwise it's kind of like, oh, Jesse's here and he'll say hi to you, and then he's off doing his own thing, and you just kind of have to let him, and that's him. It's been a weird thing to kind of navigate, probably because of only myself. But otherwise, both mine and my husband's family, I think, have come around great. And my parents are really great and helpful. And my parents have been around the whole time. So they've kind of seen that there is something. And I think, you know, my husband's family, you know, there was, from everyone, including us, there was like a lot of like, oh, he's just a boy. He'll come around, he'll talk, a lot of those things. And I think finally people are going to acceptance. And if they're not accepting that, that's it. They are very kind and at least, you know, play along, I guess.
You said something about the gifts, and that the gifts are hard because people expect this great reaction from a child. And it could even be something that she loves. And I always have to, I preload people now. I'm like, she's going to love it, but you're not going to get the reaction out of it. So don't get offended. I find it very awkward when people give her things that don't understand.
I do the same thing. I'm always like, from his first birthday, it's always been that crowd of people standing around watching. And I'm always like, he'll love it later. He will play with it. And sometimes that's a lie. Sometimes it's true. But sometimes
Yeah.
the kid doesn't, he's getting better now at 6. I will say that he will open some gifts. He's more excited about it. He might not show it, but he'll actually open them. He wouldn't open the gifts. I'd have to sit there and make him open the gifts, all for the satisfaction of other people. And I kind of hate that. And it got to the
I
point
hate
one
it now
year,
too.
like a couple years, I was like, you know what, we'll just open these later. Because if he was done, I'm
Mhm.
like, he's done. We'll just open them later. And sorry if your whole day was on my kid opening your present and being excited about it.
What about you, Kim?
Well, we really lucked out in the family department concerning her. I don't know what I would have done in the beginning without my family, because at the time there was no information, there was no support. It was really difficult back 22 years ago. And I think because of the fact that we lived with my parents when Alyssa was born, they saw her developing normally, and then they saw the stop, and they saw her losing skills, and they were kind of right there front and center. So it wasn't really that thing where I had to like explain it, and they were kind of learning it as we were learning it. And then she always had a super special bond with my dad. She was always his baby since day one. I think it's just something when you're living in the same house when a baby is born, you develop a special type of bond because you're there for late nights, you're there for early morning. My dad would hold her when I came down in the morning while I made her bottle, like just, different stuff like that. And that didn't change. If anything, it intensified when, we realized, he kind of had the philosophy that like, oh, she just doesn't have anything to say to you people. And my dad was like this big, gruff, loud guy. When you saw him soften with her, even when she was hell on wheels, because there was a time where she was just really, really difficult, and like they never faulted. And my husband's mother was amazing. She sometimes would come and, stay a couple of days and help me out. And she was there for the really nitty gritty stuff during the day. She was there when ABA came. She was there when early intervention came. She was there when every single thing was a battle.
Yeah.
She was there when nobody could touch her. So I never had to do that thing where like people thought I was being, dramatic, or they were there for her. They saw it. We did things at our house that was easier for us. We had Christmas here, we had Thanksgiving here, because it's just easier to do that. So we didn't have to try to bring her to somebody else's house, and everybody kind of was okay with that. Our siblings were amazing. My sister and his sister especially are very protective of Alyssa. Like I said in the beginning, autism wasn't a thing that a lot of people were aware of. So we had a few incidences out in the community, and between my sister and his sister, I thought they were going to kill this guy who like yelled at Alyssa and made some rude comments, and no hesitation, they were like gonna get arrested. I'm like, let's just get her out of the situation. Of course, there were things along the way. I did have other family members that would be like, she's just spoiled. Like, you couldn't tell Alyssa no. Like, we literally couldn't say that word in my house. Could not say it, because she would have such a meltdown. Like, we would try to like say it in different ways. Yeah, exactly.
Because then that word pisses
Not
them
right
off.
now. Yeah.
Maybe later.
And people thought like that was ridiculous. They thought like she was spoiled. She just needed, left with them for the weekend, and not going to happen.
You'll call me on Friday afternoon.
Like, I remember I was at a birthday party at a family's member house, and it was out of state. She grabbed the keys that were on the coffee table and stuck them in her mouth. Anything metal, it was gross. She would lick fences, like put keys in her mouth. It was just part of her sensory issues. And like they yelled at her and like took the keys away. And like I laughed, like I didn't even care. I was like, I'm done. Like she's flipping out, screaming, like, and the gifts too, like, I mean, there's been some years that sometimes it's like, she's not her age level. You know what I mean? So some of the gifts that she would get would be, I don't know, the thought wasn't behind it. And even as she got older, I would have to remind people, we do grab gifts for the kids and a Yankee swap for the adults. So she can't do a Yankee swap for adults, because you ain't taking her gift when she gets it. Sorry. And she's not gonna like understand a gift card. Like, I would just remind people, like, it could be a dollar crayons and coloring book, like, just so she would have something to open. But everybody, was really good about it. Sometimes they needed reminders, but everybody always tried to include her. And I'm not gonna say everybody understood 100%, because there's definitely, people that don't. The people that mattered to us made the adjustments, made the accommodations, try to learn with us, try to connect with her in their own way. Sometimes they would just let her be, you kind of would have to let her come around to you. And that's hard because people like Jamie, obviously like the levels are so different, but it's the same thing. Like people try to engage with her, but she likes who she likes.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to give her time to come around. You can't like force it.
And you
know,
like feel bad. For me, like my nephew loves Jesse, and my nephew's so cute. He's a lot like Jesse in some ways. And Jesse, like, half the time will not give the kid the time of day. And I feel so bad with some adults too, where you're like, you want them to, like, this person's
Yeah.
great, like them. But for
And they
some
just
reason,
ignore them
two
completely.
people walk in the room, he picks one. That's who he's gonna like. I don't know why, and I'm sorry. And that probably does suck to feel like the one not chosen.
Well, and I feel like a lot of people too would feel bad because they wouldn't want to ignore her. They wouldn't want to not acknowledge her, which is great because I hear a lot of stories that that's not the case for people. But like sometimes it's like, no, it's okay. You can just let her be. When she's ready, she'll come around. I don't know what I would have done without my family.
I think you end up having to build a community. If that's not filled with services, it's people and support somehow, some way.
Yep.
And Neil's mother also was like she was very into her grandchildren, and
Mhm.
that was her baby. You weren't gonna cross her. Do you know what I'm saying? You weren't gonna come without a gift for Alyssa. You weren't gonna do something and not include her. Like it wasn't gonna happen. So if we weren't gonna vocalize it, she was gonna vocalize it. Nobody wanted to piss her off. So
Love that.
that
gives me hope because there's so many aspects of your time under the belt where I'm like, she's done it. Her daughter's so old, everybody's 100. But yet you talk about these hard times or like having Christmas at your house. I don't know about this necessarily for you guys, but I feel like Jamie, Tabs, and I specifically are within the first couple years of diagnosis where we're like navigating it ourselves with our husband, with our immediate family, like with teachers for the first time, with doctors, still building our care teams. Like, I just don't know who to tell what stories to. It's like autism becomes your life for a good while. And I'm not sure if you rebalance the focus, but it's like listening to you refer to the first couple, challenging things with people or people not understanding fully. It's like, oh, that's past tense. It's so much hope. That gives me hope. Tabs, don't you feel like that? Like your first year, like
For sure.
I think also sometimes for me, there's a part of me that like wouldn't necessarily tell everybody all the hard. I wasn't necessarily trying to convince them we knew it was hard. I don't want to shed a bad light on her either at the same time. I didn't necessarily have time to really worry about who thought it was really hard. I just didn't have the energy to like really put into that.
Yeah.
They weren't saying it to my face. So.
That's my thing. I'm like, I don't know what people are really thinking or what they're saying to my face.
Yeah.
And what a family member had said, like somebody that I'm really close to, had said that the reason Alyssa was the way she was because she spent so much time in front of the TV when she was younger, which like that comment really hurt me a lot. I mean, we know part of autism, a lot of kids are obsessed with TV. Like that was probably like her first sign. I mean, it's not a technical sign, but like it should be on the list. Let's add it to the list. And she did. She loved Barney. Anytime it was on, she would just sit and she would laugh and her whole face would light up. She'd be so excited. And I mean, we all know this isn't how autism starts, but like, that comment really
cut.
And the person was young, the person was, I mean, I was only 22 myself. So like 21 probably at that time. But people just don't know. They,
Family, I'm kind of lucky in the family department that I come from a big family of unique human beings. So a lot of my family are artists and musically driven and just unique in their personalities and the way they present themselves to the world. And so we kind of grew up in a space where it was like a creative mindset. And also like there were so many kids that it was like you didn't have an opportunity to really give what other people were saying about you because it was always loud and chaos. And I mean, there were 6 of us growing up. So when you take 6 kids out into the public,
yeah,
I mean, it's a free for all, So when we were first going through the diagnosis, situation, like my family was really amazing with don't let them tell you who your kids are. Like not so much about diagnosis, but don't let them feed into a mindset that they aren't exactly who they're supposed to be. You know, you don't need to change them as people. This world is set up for uniqueness. You know, they're going to make whatever mark on the world that they are going to make. And they kind of embrace the patience with them and like trying to understand them on their level, which was like really helpful to me. We
I
have
love that.
yeah, it's just like a really beautiful mindset to like they wanted to understand as much as they could once we got a formal diagnosis, and they kind of are still trying to learn, you know, about my kids. We have a little bit of a hard time because we don't live near any of our family. I mean, no one lives in Phoenix. We don't have family support here. Our family is supportive, but it's not like my sister can come over and watch my kids for 2 hours or, you
Mhm.
know, be in the day to day when it's a struggle. So that part of it is super hard for us, I think. And then, you know, like my family is just warm. My sisters, especially, like both times she held my kids for the first time, she cried, she wept, you know, when she held them for the first time. So it's like there's always been an openness to them as people, which I'm so grateful for, because a lot of people don't have that, you know, trying to like find our way through this autism space. But being far away is hard. You know, I think like explaining, not necessarily my family, but explaining to people in your extended family what autism is. People have an impression of what it is and what your kids like. They either think that they can function in society as like a person from Atypical or, you know, one of those shows, or they think it's like more Rain Man, and there's this whole like spectrum on the inside. And I think it's hard to communicate. Like even we travel often to see our family because they all live out of town. You know, even trying to navigate time frames for things, like when you've been traveling with two kids who have autism and then you want to go to a family function and it's starting at 7 p.m. I'm like, that no way. We cannot. There's no way that my kids are going to last 20 minutes with a bunch of strangers that I mean, they're not strangers, but people that they're not familiar with on the day to day. And then, you know, I think there's this idea of like kids can just run around at a barbecue and it's okay if they stay up late and if they have sweets. And I'm like, we are on a routine, people. We need to go to bed at a certain time, or else the next 3 days are going to be a nightmare for us.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to do anything else on this trip. So explaining those kind of things is, I find pretty challenging.
Yeah.
Really, really hard, because you will say, you know, we can't come at 7, but you can't explain all of the things that are behind that. It's not that I don't want to. I would like to come to a barbecue at 7 o'clock and have my kids run around in the yard and play with the
Play
other
with
kids
fireflies.
and yeah, and do whatever. Like that sounds great, but it's just going to be a disaster. Like
Yeah.
they're both going to be all just a disaster. It's not going to be fun for either one of us or
How
you
do you
guys.
feel about naked and screaming at your barbecue? How would you feel about that? Anybody?
Yeah, it's just
I
not going to
think
be good.
I'll bring
I think
cookies.
that's something that like I struggled with in the beginning too, because like people would like invite you places, like they'd be like, let's go to the beach. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I couldn't go to the beach with her and my son, who was, you know, just 3 years older than her, because I would only be able to watch her. I
Right.
would barely be able to watch her. And like he'd be
Yeah.
like, what, just like, you know, sailing off into the ocean on his own. Like I couldn't do it. It would just wasn't safe. Or
Yeah.
I couldn't do like if someone would be like, oh, let's go try this beach. And it's like, no, I can't go try a beach with Alyssa. Like I have to go there. I have to like
Yes.
I have is
Yes.
it rocky? Is
Yeah.
it where's the parking lot? Like how big is the beach area?
How
Like
far do we have to walk?
yeah, like
Yeah.
all
How are we
these
going to get out
things.
of there? Yes.
And like people just wouldn't understand, because it's not that I didn't want to go, and it is sometimes it sucks. Like sometimes you end up feeling isolated because like you said, you want to go. You don't want to be like,
Mm.
you know, oh, I'll just stay home then. But like I couldn't have her in an unsafe situation, which could possibly put my son in an unsafe situation.
Yeah, because you have to watch.
And then
both of them.
people would be like, oh, we'll help you. Just come, we'll help you. And like,
Oh, shut
and
up.
it's
Are you
great. Like
bringing the
it's,
SWAT team?
and what, yeah, but what would happen is they would help with my son.
Yeah.
And I would be stuck. I hate to say it, but I would be stuck one-on-one with her. And if it wasn't a good environment for her, it would just be me constantly like trying to stop her from doing this, trying to stop her. You know, that's not fun for me. I'm not spending time with my other child, and I'm doing all the hard stuff with her. and everybody else is like relaxing, which obviously it's my child, so that's fine, but that's not helping me.
Yeah, you'd rather
Like
not be
carrying my
there.
beach bag to the sand is not the type of help I'm looking for here, people.
Well, that reminds me because like my family likes to vacation together a lot.
Oh
And
yeah, my
they're
family
very
too.
busy people, and like
Yeah.
I mean, like a couple vacations ago, we had a fight because a few of my family members are very like, okay, we'll be here at this time, and we're going, we're going to Disney, so we need to be there at opening, and we're going to do this and this and this. And the whole time I'm like, okay, you guys can say that, but that might not happen for us. Or like, okay, we're going to kind of do our own thing, or we'll get there when we get there, or, like, and some people get offended by that, or they just like, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. And sometimes he is fine. It's almost frustrating that it goes great sometimes because I'm like, well, yeah, it did go great this time, but next time it might not. I just remember we went to Animal Kingdom one morning and he's just like screaming in the like special stroller we buy him where he can cover his face and hide for the first hour because he's uncomfortable and he needs to settle in. And it's like the first hour we go anywhere, we know it's like a lost hour. Like he has to warm up to the place. He has to get used to it. And so trying to get like my, some members of my family kind of understand that. Others are just like, okay, well, you guys just do your own thing. And then there's some like, oh, but we should all try to stick together. And I'm like, my life doesn't work that way. I'll try to be there at 8 a.m. or whatever, but something might go wrong. If my kid doesn't wake up, I'm not waking him up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
I was gonna
sure.
say that. 'Cause
For
that could be the night,
sure.
that could be the night where
Yeah.
like they didn't sleep all
Yeah.
night,
Yeah.
If
Sometimes-
like the cereal's wrong in the morning and he's pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm
really
like,
lucky.
it sucks, but they think, I don't know if they think this, but I think they're like, well, if you just make him do it, he'll adapt.
Oh
and he'll
my
do it.
God. She doesn't actually need a green plate. I'm like,
Yeah.
she actually needs a green plate.
We've gone to Disneyland with my brother and my mom, like in his family, 2 or 3 times. I always get confused. And she is a good traveler. But what I will say is they're really good about iPads being on at dinner tables. I'm very lucky. My brother and my sister-in-law are very accommodating to what she needs. It's like, well, what is going to work for Kaya? Well, no, that doesn't work for Kaya, so we have to do this. Like they're really good about, that kind of
Considering
stuff.
her.
Very considerate about, I'm really lucky. Yeah.
I think in general, just like kids in general, like we took a family vacation. Nora was like 6 months old. Nixon was about 3 to a lake house with my sister and her family, and it's so fun always. But I was breastfeeding at the time, and Nixon was like his adventure wilderness spirit. It was like in the woods. He wanted to climb the mountains and be on the boat and do all of those things. And I was just like breastfeeding all the time. And so I was leaving all the activities to go upstairs and breastfeed. And there was one point in the vacation, my sister's going to listen to this, so I love you with all my heart. But there was one point in the vacation where everyone was out doing activities. And it just happened that other people thought that someone else was with me, or I don't know how it all worked out. But I ended up at the house with Nora by myself for like half the day, because everyone was out like doing other things. And just parenting in general, I think you feel isolated in that way without people intentionally doing it. It's like you have to leave to breastfeed, or you can, whip out a boob in front of your family or whatever, or your kid needs to be in privacy for that because they won't feed if there's too much noise or action or whatever. But then on top of that, if you add this layer of like autism specific routines and times, and like you just cannot do certain things that you would normally do when you press your kids on vacation. Like all kids get crabby, all kids get tired, they get worn out from traveling, they are eating weird stuff, they're not sleeping in their own bed. But for us, it's like times 1,000. Like getting to the car in the morning sometimes is a challenge because something's messed up, or there's not pancakes in the house, or there's not like the specific food item or pants.
Right kind of cheese.
Right kind of cheese. Yeah, the right kind of cheese. Like explaining that, I think, is hard. And especially with my family, there's no intention to make me feel isolated. Like it's naturally going to happen, but you can't help but feel like separated even when you're on a family vacation together. Just is what it is. So
I can just immediately know when it's not going to be a good day. Like
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
she could wake up, it literally could be the look in her eyes, the look in her face, like, and I immediately know. It could be that I had every intention of going somewhere or doing something, but like, I just know it's not going to be good. And so then we don't go. And then people don't understand. And I had one family member that would like invite us to like the movies. And it's like, no, she can't sit through a movie. Like, she doesn't understand what a movie is. She can't. And I know no 3-year-olds created a movie, but like,
Different.
and then she stopped asking. But it's, you know, it might have been nice if she just came and took my son. It wasn't that I got mad at her for it. It's just she stopped inviting, and then, you know, it just kind of.
You can't explain the anxiety preparation. Like
Oh,
when you're thinking about
yeah.
going somewhere, there are 1,000 things you have to think about. Like you were saying, it for us specifically, it's water. Is there going to be a pond?
Yeah.
Is there going to be a fountain? Is there going to be a lake? Is there
Google Earth.
a puddle? Is there going to be rocks? Like a puddle. We're in trouble if there's a puddle. You know, like any shape, form of water. If I go to a place where we've never been before, our entire trip there can be derailed if there's a fountain at the entrance of that place, which in Arizona is highly
Often.
likely. Yeah, like there's
Yeah.
fountains, and Nixon's gotten better than he was when he was like 3.5. But the focus, like trying to move them from something that they want to do, like play in the water of the puddle, is going to cause the next 2 hours to be like, he doesn't want to be in the museum when there's an awesome fountain at the entrance. Are you kidding me? I don't blame him, but it's not going to be like a
Also,
good
like
time.
if you pry him from the fountain, he's
Yeah.
not going to want to be in the museum in wet pants. So
No.
like there is a lot that can go awry in the goddamn puddle.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And now I have 2 children who are fascinated with water. So it's like double the experience.
That's
So
just when Amelie was a baby. We went, as she was like 3 weeks old, we went up to the mountains to this place called Estes Park here. And my mother-in-law hosted all of us at this, like these condos, and it was so nice and beautiful and great. But there's this giant rapid river right behind the condo.
Oh
And the
no.
whole time. And so I'm breastfeeding.
Yeah.
Your story reminded me of stuff at that. Like, so I'm up in our condo, like breastfeeding a lot, and I would come down, but they would be, you know, in another family member condo, which was on the ground level where you could go out the back door and the lakes. I mean, the river's right there. And I was just to everyone, I was like, please watch just, and I told my husband, I was like, if you take your eyes off of him for 1 second, like that, you know, like I'm not kidding. And so I, you know, those are the moments people are like, she's crazy, helicopter mom crazy.
Oh God.
And I'm
I
like,
know.
no, I'm not. I'm like, and that's when people start to notice. Like, they're like, oh, he's getting really close. And I'm like, he has no
Yeah.
fear. My
Yeah.
family, the same thing. The first time we took him to the ocean, I was like, watch him, be careful. My dad had him at one point, and I was like, and Jesse just starts walking in and just keeps walking and walking. And my dad's like, oh my gosh. Like, I mean, my dad's right
You're
there.
not
He holds
Moana.
his hand. I'm like,
Get
he
out.
has no fear. He would
Yeah.
walk into the ocean and
Yes.
float off. He would
My
not
kids
notice.
too.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's freaky.
Terrifying. It is terrifying. I know when we were on that same family vacation, it was like a circle, and there was one door in the back and one in the front, and people are coming in, going all day. And the whole,
Oh.
I think the whole vacation, I was like, is the door closed? Shut the door.
And
You don't
sometimes
get
I don't
down.
even know sometimes if it's like, and I say the same thing too, Jamie. I'm like, she literally has no fear, but it's not even the fear. It's not even the understanding of
Yeah.
getting hurt.
Right.
I always say, and I know that Kaya's dad thinks I'm being dramatic, until we were in Seattle and he tried to teach her to go through a crosswalk and he almost lost his friggin' mind. He's like, she doesn't get it. Like, she's not understanding. Jen, she's not understanding. And I said, yeah, told you. But I said she would walk into an oncoming train and have no idea that a train or a car or a vehicle could kill her. She would have no sense of danger in that sense. So I always say that she has no sense of fear, but I don't think it's fear. I think
Yeah.
she legitimately doesn't understand that it would harm her, physically kill her, if
Yeah.
she walked in front of that truck
Yeah.
coming down the street, you know?
Yeah.
My
I feel
family
like
gets
there's
it
a
now.
pull, like a energetic, like, you know how there's a wind after a car goes by?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Celie is like attracted to all of the commotion when she's attracted to it. At other times, she's not at all sensory seeker. She's sensory sensitive. And she'd be like literally blown over by the same experience. Like bringing it back to family with Celie, it's hard to explain both the like sensory seeker and the sensory sensitive aspects of her, and not just be like this mom who's pretty detached that's like talking highs and lows of my kid.
Yeah.
Like, because you have to understand, if you're going to be in the room with her, these are the awesome things that you might see. These are the reasons I might run. And these are the reasons, like, you're going to fall in love and maybe get hurt. I don't know.
And
Oh,
then
my mom's chased her 2 blocks up. I mean, she knows now. She
Yeah.
knows now.
What I was thinking too, Rach, when you were talking about that, like the whole sensory seeking thing, and just in general, I think it changes our relationship with family too, because we analyze our kids way more than anyone else on the planet because we have to get
yes.
services. And so it's hard. I don't judge my family members' parenting. I did before I had kids. It was
Yeah.
awful. And and then I learned, like, once you have kids, you can't judge because you're just tired and it's hard, and your kids, there's plenty of days I'm a bad parent, but you see their kids doing something, like, and they're like, stop doing that. That's disgusting. Like, they're playing with their spit, or they're,
Yeah.
rubbing a gross, like, wall or something, and I'm like, oh, the kid needs sensory, or, like, coping mechanisms we all have.
Yeah.
And all kids have, but we notice them more now because we have to analyze that in our kids. And it's like, but you don't say anything because you don't want to be like, well, he's probably doing that.
He needs some input there.
Yeah,
if you could just get him a fidget.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
the other thing that I think happens too is like, it's almost like the opposite, where like we would have family members that would be like, we'll take her. Like, we'll
Oh,
take her
please.
out, and
Yeah.
you're like,
No, you
yeah,
won't.
no, well, yeah, no, you won't, because
No,
like
you won't.
they just have no idea of the
Yeah.
Idea.
huge responsibility it would be to have her somewhere. Like you said, Jamie, like you literally can't, if there's water or a street, you literally couldn't take your eyes off of her. And you literally never know when she could do anything. Like there's just so few people that we could ever, and it wasn't really until she was a little bit older, I could never have somebody take her when she was younger. Like,
Well, doesn't part of you want to be like, okay, go ahead and take her if it wasn't risking your child's life?
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, go for it.
and I don't
See how
think,
well
like,
that goes
I don't
for
think
you.
they mean anything bad by it. Like they're trying to be
No.
helpful, but like you're just like, yeah. And it's always those people that you would like probably never
Call me after you call the 911.
even let like them take your typical children.
Yeah. But and I'm lucky in that sense with my family because they're always asking questions.
Mhm.
Like, like, what should I let them eat? Or, like, what do we have to watch for? Our daughter had pica for a while. And so, you had to watch her around any piece of cardboard that was even remotely close to her mouth for, so that they're always asking questions to try and keep them safe and understand. But it is like you have a heightened like prickly sense. Like today there was a bunny close to the house as we were trying to get in the car, so Nixon starts chasing the bunny. It's right by the street. I'm like, oh, this is turning this in 30 seconds, this is going to be in the street. There's no question in my mind that this is where this is going. But you are primed for that, like,
Yeah.
like we know that that's what's coming
But
next.
somebody else doesn't think that they will run into that street.
Right.
My sister-in-law is one of the only, now let me be clear. I can't say, my mom can, my mom's very physically fit. Can chase my kid up 2 blocks, but she goes to bed early. My kid does not go to bed early. So like,
Yeah.
as much as my mom tries, and she's been great, she has added, safety locks to all her doors and that kind of stuff. But my sister-in-law is one of the only people I trust to watch my daughter overnight because she understands. She will get out of the house. She understands the nights.
You don't hear 2 sounds in a row and like
Yeah.
check it in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, something about
My
that,
sister-in-law, I think for a long time, I even maybe thought like, am I just hovering? Am I just a little extra? And it's like, this kid's a little extra and like chicken or the egg here. And so when Celie was a little nugget, my cousin got married and her parents' yard where she got married had this big like retaining wall that ends up being like 5 feet. Like it's not a cliff, but it's like a big drop. And my sister-in-law was like, oh, I'll watch Celie real quick. Yeah, why don't you just grab us some drinks or whatever? And so I think I handle it. Suddenly Celia is bolting towards that. I like run to intercept. Like you can like say, oh, I can watch a 3-year-old girl, little cutie, little cute, little curly kid until she's on the way. And like she's like a hummingbird and like a pinball, like just a mix of erratic, sporadic, irrational curiosity.
Like,
Well,
what shoes are you wearing first before you offer to watch?
Yes.
Put on the sneaks.
Yeah.
Put on the sneaks.
The Nike time.
Yeah. Yeah.
and the intensity that you have to have when you're
Yes.
watching our children is just so next level that people just don't like. When we used to we have a pond near us, and it's a small pond. The sandy area is pretty small, but like I could never sit up on the sand in a chair. Like I would have to be sitting on the dock, or
Yeah.
if I had a chair, it'd have to be in the water. Like I couldn't be away from the water. It's like the same thing. Like they think you're being dramatic
Extra.
a little bit. Yeah, I remember one time Alyssa's she used to like to bob, so she used to go under the water and pop up. That was like her
Oh.
thing. She just did it constantly. And I'm looking and I go, now there's lifeguards here too. So like everyone's like, oh, there's lifeguards. I'm not
Yeah.
relying on 16-year-old and 18-year-old lifeguards to like watch
Rescue my
There's-
child.
Playing their
Yeah,
banana
and
boat.
there's 15, 20 kids in the pond playing
Yeah.
in the water. And I'm watching her and I'm like, oh, well, I don't like the way that looks. It almost looks like she's over her head. And then I'm looking and I'm like, oh my God, she was over her head. But because she has no fear, you couldn't tell, there was no panic. She would just go under and then she would push up with her feet and her head would pop above the water. And I'm like, I start running down the thing, and then the lifeguard sees me running, and like we're both running towards her. And like it's like, see, like you literally can't let your guard down.
Yeah.
Like literally, and then it's
Here's
like
this one time I was able to let my guard down. This is not a family, but this is really quick. I'll be very brief. The other day, Thursday, Friday, I was at my house. I had a little friend over, and then this therapist came to my house, and she wanted to chit chat, and I needed to chit chat because the prior few days had not been great. And I was fixing to get up with this therapist and leave. And my daughter says this to my friend: I'll just scooch over so you can come sit by me.
Yes. It was so cute.
My heart melted. It was Tabitha. Tabitha was over. And because my friend happens to be an extraordinary special needs mom, I get to talk to the therapist for 30 minutes while I neglected my friend because you were bonding with my kid. I've never felt so comforted to do a thing in my life as to leave an autism mom auntie.
Yes, it was so cute too. She was showing me her game. We
made me
had
cry.
a great time.
Can I scooch over so you can sit by me? I'm like,
In her mermaid tail.
Jamie.
In her mermaid tail.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was amazing.
oh, that was like not a quick change either. Hey, she was like, Tabitha, close your eyes.
Yeah.
Tabitha, close your eyes. She's
Yeah.
like,
Rachel, you should have saved this for the next episode.
I know. I'm
Friendship.
sorry. But it was like, man, can we be family? Because I just got to
Yes.
walk away like it was all typical and stuff.
Yeah.
Peak of our next episode.
She was so great. Yeah. And I would have felt that vibration out the garage door if it was coming because I'm primed for that.
Celie went into
yeah.
this thing where she flopped down on her back like a half beached whale, and she started kicking and whipping a little skosh. And I think she was just testing because
Yeah.
Lacey is there. And was Lacey there yet? I don't know, but
Yeah,
Tabs is
she
there.
was. She was. Yeah.
And all that I know is Celie and I are on the floor in a kind of like a pre-rumble. And then Tabs is sitting on the chair like, like she's with a clipboard of a marine biologist, like watching a mermaid flop.
I'm like, no thing. Ain't no thing. It
Sorry.
was good.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is like, I think people's intentions are great. I think they want to help you,
Mhm.
but that they don't understand the level of like, I'll watch your kids or I'll help you with your kids. It's like, it's not
And then
really,
when they're around for a few of those incidents, then they start to see the
Yeah.
level of supervision that they need and the level of,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. And really
how
like
quickly things can go south.
I could for sure could leave my kids with my sister, no problem. Like I know that she would be on it. She would be cautious. She would be like listening to like, you got to keep the doors locked. You know, here's the baby
You
gate.
hear one snap of those pajamas,
Yeah.
get in there.
Yes, please. Don't let her take her jammies off. You know,
You know what's coming. You don't want to know.
yeah, for sure. Like she would have no problem with that. She's wicked fast. in good shape. So I think she can handle it. But it is like you can't communicate those things. Like there's a long list. Like the, knife thing has to be back in the corner of the kitchen because they can grab the scissors, which neurotypical children, you have to be aware of that too. But my son will literally cut his own shirt if they're in access, or things like that. It's like a different level of cautious. Like you can't just say, no, don't touch the scissors. If you're in the kitchen, which is open and connected to our house, but you're not hearing anything, there's something going on in there that's not going to be good. Whatever's happening 2 feet away.
I'm
We need-
surprised we don't all have those mirrors. Those mirrors at the end of the Target aisle.
Oh yeah, we should
Those
have
big
those.
circle mirrors, like, oh, from the couch, you can see all the way
Yeah.
to the fridge door, you dink. You're
Genius.
busted.
We
Yeah.
should all install those in our house.
Like autism
glance.
super mom mirror.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think for me, like in the beginning, I could only ever have someone be at my house with her.
Yes.
You know,
Oh, well,
It's so much
yeah.
more helpful to be at home.
and then
Oh,
like
why
I
don't you
think,
come over with Celie? Oh,
Yeah.
do you have an insurance policy for that?
and then like my parents could take her at their house because like it was kind of like their second house. And then as she got a little bit older, there were a few family members that could take her to their house. But like taking her out in the community is a whole different.
Yes.
I mean, there was different times in our life that I wouldn't even take her out without
Yeah.
it being me and him. Like
Yep.
certain places. And still sometimes I do stuff and I'm like, it'll be fine. She's so good now. And then I'm like, oh, I wasn't thinking about this.
And then
or
you
this.
returned a rental car in Florida
Or when I took her to Martha's Vineyard and
on a ferry.
I didn't realize that me and my daughter and Alyssa went and I was leaving my daughter there. That meant I was taking the ferry home by myself. And I didn't consider that part. And I also didn't consider like how Alyssa was going to feel about leaving her sister behind. I didn't really think it through. I mean, it ended up being okay, but like, it's just like, even now these things happen, not as much because I kind of know.
And I really think that like the most important thing, like my brother is amazing because he's always trying to understand
Mhm.
like and learn as much as he can. Like recently he sent my daughter some headphones to try out because she's having like sensory stuff with sounds. And I think like for anyone's family who's listening, trying to learn as much as you can, minus the judgment if possible, is so comforting to us because we're also trying to learn at the same time. Like it makes you feel connected and it makes you feel close. And like we don't know what we're doing either. So
Exactly.
if you're trying to learn with us, that's I think.
And I need to be better about that because, sometimes someone sends you an article or they tell you, like my poor dad one time, he was like, I just heard about this essential oil. If you, and I was like,
article? Really, Jamie? Or a
It's
friggin'
always an
link?
article.
A
yeah, I
link?
know. But my dad was like, you should try this essential oil. I'm like, Dad, essential oil is not going to cure my kid. And he's like, oh, like I didn't mean to like, but like I've tried
Freaking oils my
but it was so sweet that my dad like did that. And like, I will
Yeah.
say with every person who's done that, when they suggest something like that, or they like, it warms my heart so much. And that's the moment I know I'm like, oh, you've either seen something and you understand, or you're accepting this. And it's so kind of like people.
Yeah.
To,
Or
like,
you're learning alongside us. Like,
yes.
yeah.
I think for me the key is just to understand and treat my child like a person. She's not just a person with special needs or a person with autism. She's Alyssa, like, and get to know her. And I think that she doesn't like when I
You
talk about.
said her name.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear her?
Yeah.
You can't hear anything on this laptop unless you're like inside of it. Like, but like she's behind me. But just treating them, like a person. That's and getting to know who that person is. To me, that's key.
Yes, for sure.
I always say make space for my kid or make space for who that child is. And it might be a lot of space and it might be a distant space from you, but
You
make
might not know
space
how to
in
give
whatever you're
space.
doing. If you're having a family reunion, maybe do it at a location where there's an extra room where they can go if they need. Just like considering things and including them, even if they don't necessarily want to be included the way the other kids want to be included.
Well, it's like, and it's like, just sometimes it's like, just try, you know what I mean? Like, don't don't give up trying, just because it doesn't work and, they don't like the present or they don't want to do the activity. That doesn't mean the next time that you come, you should just not try. Like, I feel like,
Well, and for the love of God, don't take it personal.
and don't take it
Yeah.
personally. Yeah.
Dude.
That like hurts us. Even if they don't realize it, that hurts your mom heart. You know what I mean? If someone's just going to leave your kid out and like not even give them a second thought, like always try to include them or just ask the parent ahead of
Yeah.
time, this is what the plan is. Do you think Celia would like to do this? Is there something else that we could also do instead?
My idea from henceforth will be, if you could buy her a Dory balloon that lasts 13 years, like Alyssa's has, that would be great.
It's only been 2 months, guys.
That's so long.
I know.
Crazy.
For all you listeners out there, Alyssa got a Dory balloon for her birthday that is still floating behind Kim's head right now, 2 months
true.
later.
Yeah, it's astounding.
Yeah.
Hey, Party City, if you'd like to sponsor this podcast.
Exactly. I got my $20 worth.
Yeah. Party
I thought I was getting her a little round Dory balloon that was like $3.99, and it was
Nope.
this huge life size, not even life size, because Dory is definitely a lot smaller than
A
that in real
lot
life.
smaller.
Human size.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
And I was
thing's
like,
gotta have a
oh,
4-foot wingspan.
Well, we want to say thank you to our families who are learning about our kids and supporting us and showing up and listening
Even
to
if
the
we make it hard.
yeah, even if we make it hard, listening to the tears, even if we don't know what we're talking about at the time. Keep calling, keep leaving messages, keep sending text messages,
Send
keep
coffee.
showing up at the door, send coffee.
just love our kids.
Yep. So thanks everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for joining us at the table for episode 3 of our relationship series. Join us next time as we discuss friendships. We'll talk all about how we view friendships now that we're parents and how we've lost and gained friends through our journeys. If you are enjoying our podcast and wherever you're listening allows, please remember to rate and review us. To join in on the conversation, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram or email us at tablefor5podcast@gmail.com. Thanks for sitting with us. We'll chat soon.